I think it is appropriate at this point for me to admonish both the House managers and the President's Council in equal terms to remember that they are addressing the world's greatest deliberative body.
And that includes the Supreme Court's newest, brilliant, principled woman, Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
And I think and I have a lot of respect for him. I like him and I respect him. But I think we have to use some common sense. This Ninth Circuit, everybody knows it. It's totally out of control.
The Supreme Court just handed Trump his morning coffee with a side of legal smackdown. Chief Justice Roberts, yes, the conservative one, led the charge against Trump's attempt to pocket $2 billion in humanitarian aid. Remember when Trump said he could do whatever he wanted with government money? Well, turns out even the Supreme Court has limits on presidential temper tantrums. This 5-4 ruling is like watching someone finally take away the toddler's toys after he refused to share. Did you really think Trump could just turn off the money faucet for humanitarian aid without anyone noticing? Well, someone did, and they had a fancy robe and gavel. Trump's latest money-grabbing scheme just hit a Supreme Court-sized wall, and honestly, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The whole mess started when his administration decided to play keep-away with a cool $2 billion in humanitarian aid through USAID. No warning, no transition period, just Trump saying "mine now" to money that was supposed to help actual human beings in need. But here's the kicker. This wasn't cash for future projects or hypothetical do-gooding. This was money for work that aid organizations had already completed. Imagine showing up at your job for a month, doing everything they asked, and then your boss says, "Actually, I decided not to pay you," while ordering himself a new gold-plated toilet seat. That's essentially what Trump tried to pull here, except instead of stiffing one contractor, his usual move, he was stiffing humanitarian organizations around the world.
In the 1905 Swain trial, a senator objected when one of the managers used the word pettifogging, and the presiding officer said the word ought not to have been used.
We've shown some light on the Ninth Circuit. I know that Chief Justice Roberts, John Roberts, has been speaking a little bit about it.
Been reaffirmed many times. Casey is precedent on precedent, which itself is an important factor.
Answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall in that category, and scholars across the spectrum.
Judge Tanya Chutkan Ali, a Biden appointee who clearly doesn't subscribe to the "whatever Trump wants, Trump gets" newsletter, stepped in with what basically amounted to a judicial "oh hell no." She ordered the Trump administration to release the funds by a specific deadline. And you just know that sent the Orange Menace into a Diet Coke-fueled rage spiral. The Trump team, absolutely shocked that someone would dare question their divine right to do whatever they want with taxpayer money, ran crying to the Supreme Court for help. It's like when a kid gets in trouble with mom and immediately runs to dad hoping for a different answer. Chief Justice Roberts initially issued a temporary administrative stay, which is basically court speak for "let me think about this for a minute," not an actual ruling on the merits. This gave Team Trump a brief moment of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could get away with this particular cash grab.
And I think and I have a lot of respect for him. I like him and I respect him. But I think we have to use some common sense. This Ninth Circuit, everybody knows it. It's totally out of control.
One reason it has earned that title is because its members avoid speaking in a manner and using language that is not conducive to civil discourse. I don't think we need to aspire to that high a standard, but I do think those addressing the Senate should remember where they are.
Meanwhile, while the legal drama was playing out in Washington's marble halls, real people were suffering. These funds weren't destined for luxury projects or border walls. They were meant for things like AIDS prevention programs, clean water initiatives, and food aid for regions experiencing famine. You know, just the little things that keep actual humans alive. But clearly, Trump had more important things to worry about, like making sure his comb-over stayed perfectly positioned during those windy golf outings. The Supreme Court finally made their decision, voting 5-4 against Trump. And here's where it gets really interesting. Chief Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's own appointee, joined the liberal justices in telling him no. That lineup probably made Trump spit out his Diet Coke mid-slurp, his own judicial pick turning against him. The betrayal, the horror, the unexpected application of actual legal principles.
And what they're doing, what they're saying, the opinions are very unfair to law enforcement. They can't believe the decisions that are being made by these judges.
To that end, we've appointed more than 200 conservative judges to our federal courts at every level. And they're all men and women who will uphold the God-given liberties enshrined in our founding documents. And that includes Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
As a judge, it is an important precedent of the Supreme Court. By it, I mean Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey.
Say that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled, but descriptively it does mean that it's not a case that everyone has accepted and doesn't call for its overruling.
The court basically told Judge Ali her deadline had passed, but to create new ones, essentially saying, yes, make them pay the money, just give them reasonable time to do it. It was a compromise that still maintained the core principle. Trump can't just pocket humanitarian aid because he feels like it. Justice Alito was so mad about this ruling that he wrote he was stunned by the decision. That's judge speak for throwing a temper tantrum almost as big as the one Trump probably had when he heard the news. Imagine being so upset about being forced to send humanitarian aid that's already been promised, that you have to put your outrage in all caps in an official Supreme Court document. That's some next-level pettiness, even by Trumpian standards. The whole situation speaks volumes about Trump's priorities. While organizations were waiting for funds they'd been promised for work they'd already done, work that literally saves lives, Trump was trying to redirect that money elsewhere. Maybe to build another few feet of his border wall, perhaps to gold plate another fixture in Mar-a-Lago. Or maybe just to spite the global community because international cooperation doesn't fit his America First brand of isolationism. And that, folks, is what we call a Trump reality check, straight from the Supreme Court to his Mar-a-Lago doorstep. What's especially delicious about this SmackDown is that it came from a court where Trump thought he had friends. Turns out the law doesn't care about your golf buddies. When the ruling hit, Trump predictably threw a digital tantrum, hitting social media like a toddler hits the floor in the cereal aisle. This is the guy who once tweeted, "The Supreme Court has lost its way," when things didn't go his way. Classic Donnie Diapers behavior. The best part? That $2 billion will now actually help real people, fighting hunger and disease instead of funding another gold toilet. The law finally put limits on presidential authority, proving that even orange ex-presidents aren't above the rules. Who knew?